I've fallen in love and I can't get up. Anybody ever felt that way? Fallen in love and I can't get up. A few weeks ago, a friend of mine and I had a conversation, and in our conversation, we were discussing a third friend who is in a relationship that we can't quite figure out. The person that individual is in a relationship doesn't work, doesn't contribute anything to the household, is totally relying upon our friend. Our friend has evidence that this person has reached out via social media to other people, flirting, doing all kinds of things that would kind of really question their relationship. This person, our friend even found this person having text someone to talk about how repulsive and disgusting they found the person that they are in a relationship with, and how they don't know how they would be in that situation. And we can't quite figure out why our friend would stay in a situation that doesn't uplift them in any way and doesn't serve them in any way. But we remember when she first met this person and how her whole outlook and her whole idea was, I'm in love. I just fell in love. I found this person and I've fallen in love. And I get it. When we see someone, we meet someone who's attractive to us, you know, those pretty eyes, those pretty brown or blue or hazel eyes, those bedroom eyes, that just sink into those pools of lure and all of that, you know, the physique that just won't quit. The body, the booty, all of those things, the lips, the hips, all of that, you know, the voice that's, you know, so deep in songs, just there. Where it's just so high and sweet, and it just relaxes us, and their ambition, drive, all of those things that we get caught up in, and we find ourselves having fallen for it, and there we are. Woo! In love, fallen in love. It's there. We find ourselves going down paths and doing things that we would never imagine, never dream of. We sometimes feel like that I remember in the young days of almost being so caught up in this love thing that you couldn't eat, and spending long nights on the telephone and talking through the night, and then when it's time to hang up, you hang up, no, you hang up first, no, you hang up, and you're there, then I love you, no, I love you more, and all of the stuff that goes on, and people are nodding and smiling, so I think you know where I'm coming from, you kind of maybe been there once or twice, and all of that, but the dynamics that are there when it comes to falling in love. And you've heard me say this before. I said it last week, and I've said it another time. This is a part of my own personal philosophy when dealing with people, when it comes to the idea of romantic love and all of that, that when we first meet these people in our lives, we meet their representative. And we send our representative to meet them. So we're on our best behavior, and we're caught up in all of that, the exterior, all of the great and wonderful things about them, which is good because we want to send our representative. We want to meet the best of who they are and to see all of that and get an idea of what this person is like and those things that attract us. Because after all, those things that attract us from a physical standpoint and all of that are a part of how we're hardwired. It's a part of how we've evolved as a species to continue to perpetuate the species, because they're things that bring our attention. So I understand that. I get that. It's all a part of that. And then what begins to happen is we reach that point of spiritual enlightenment, where that funny laugh ain't so funny anymore. It's kind of irritating. That voice that was so sultry and all of that just kind of... The body kind of goes a little bit. Booty sags a bit. The lips and hips, they make their shift. And all of the stuff that brought us there. And as M. Scott Peck talks about delayed enlightenment and all of that, that's the opportunity to really then love. Because love is a choice. It's not something we fall into. We may fall into it initially, but to keep it going, we reach a point where we choose as we go past those things, when those things are not always there, what it is that we're going to do. What am I going to do now? I think about oftentimes the story that a friend told me about when his grandparents met. And his grandparents have been together for a very long time, but when they first met, their grandfather was so intent on making sure that he gave the grandmother the best impression possible that any time that he had to pass gas, he would go outside. He didn't want to do it in front of her. He didn't want to ruin her idea of him. He thought she was too precious and too sweet and kind and all of that for him to do anything like that in her presence. So he'd always go outside. One particular day he went outside, handled his business, came back in, and she didn't hear him come in. And as he was making his way around the corner, he suddenly heard the loudest and the longest expelling of gas possible. And he thought to himself, oh my God, is this who I'm with? How awful, how terrible, how can I say? Ooh. And it took him a minute to realize that she just did hers inside. When she thought he was out, he did his outside, but they were more of the same there. And what he was labeling as being disgusting and beside the kind of image that he had built in his mind of her, is really who she was. And a part of it that's important is making that choice to love that person when we begin to see those other aspects, those other sides of them that are not all that we made them out to be, that when we put them up on that pedestal. And that's when the real opportunity for loving begins. That's when the real opportunity to expand who we are in such a way that we encompass that person into our space, into our environment, into our understanding and our awareness. That's when we begin loving. And it really struck me today, because one of the keys to how we do that, and the thing about it is to think about the reading that Sydney did. Now, when I found out that we didn't have the people to sign up, I just started contacting a few people to do things. And I sent Sydney a text, but I didn't say anything about what the message was going to be or anything like that. And what does she read? Something about unconditional love. Because the key to moving past the place of having fallen in love and not being able to get up to where I like to call standing in love. Because when you stand in love, you are no longer in that place of helplessness and hopelessness when things are happening. But when you stand in love, you claim your power. And one of the keys to claiming your power is unconditional love. By unconditional love, it means that we stop having conditions by which we impose upon another person in order for me to love them. that they have to act a certain way, that they have to believe a certain way, that they have to do certain things, that as long as you still have that cute little smile and everything, I'll love you. As long as you got the money coming in, I'll love you. As long as you make me feel good all the time and build and boost my esteem, I'll love you. Put conditions on them. As long as you're this way or that way, I'll love you. That's conditional love. But unconditional love, again, going back to M. Scott Peck, part of what he defines as love is when, and I'm paraphrasing, but love basically is when we open our boundaries in such a way that it begins allowing that other person that we are connected with to pursue and to experience and to know their spiritual growth. It said nothing about any of the other stuff, but about that person's spiritual growth. And we do it in such a way that we love them unconditionally. We see them as growing. And a concept that I learned a number of years ago, and I applied in my own relationship with my wife, is what we call and say about one another is a partner in believing. A partner in believing, or we say PIB for short. What a partner in believing is that person who holds the space for you, who knows the truth of who you are, and who is focused on you finding the full expression of who you are, of who's there to remind you in those times, in those occasions when you can't remember yourself, when you forget yourself, when life gets to the point where things get so busy and so hectic and so chaotic and all of those things. Somebody who stands in the gap for you, that stands in the space and says, you got this. Remember who you are. Remember how magnificent and wonderful that you are. Somebody who is your partner in believing. They believe for you. They believe in you. They know it. They help to remind you. And I know I say this to her all the time, and she gives me that look like, boy, you sure are corny. But when we wake up in the morning, I will tell her so often, I get to wake up next to Emma Crystal. And I said, not only that, you get to be Emma Crystal. What a magnificent day. Now I know it sounds corny, she just said it's corny and all of that, but I don't care, because what I'm saying to her is, despite everything else she might go through, everything else she might face, all the things that people will throw at her from time to time, her own insecurities and her worries about and all of that, despite all of that, I'm saying to her, you are a magnificent, God-magnificent expression. And I'm so glad and so proud and so happy to be in your space, to be in your life. And I'm glad to have you in my life. That's a partner in believing. That's what it's about. Where we expand who we are to the point at which we embrace love and respect, and we give thanks for the person. Ultimately, we get to the point where we take that in and we give it out. And then if we could do it in that relationship, then we could expand it to the other relationships that we have, whether it's a romantic relationship or not, but with others, begin to understand that and increase our being unconditional lovers. And as we are unconditional lovers, then it means we accept the people that are around us unconditionally. We don't have to have situations and circumstances and people to be a certain way in order for us to feel good. We just feel good anyway. That's what a lot of people run into. I find myself running into it as well. But a whole lot of times, a lot of our stress and a lot of our just being anxious about stuff and all of that is because we don't have other people the way we want them to be. And because they're not the way we want them to be, we're upset. and we're worried. And I know for a long time I would look at what other people were saying in social media and the news and all of that stuff, and I'd be upset because they don't think this way and they're not saying all that. And I remember after a while, forget all that. Doesn't have a thing to do with me. It's about them. That the only person that I can do anything about is, as Les Brown says, the one-to-a-box theory. That when you go, they will put you in the ground, one to a box. And that's the person you worry about. That's the only person that you ultimately can have any kind of control or do anything with or anything for or do anything about, which is yourself. And when we understand that, we can stand in love. And when we stand in love, that means we reach a point at which we are able to become our own advocates. Kate Jagede, who is a student with Neville, and she's been publishing some great things, and I started following her and all of that, and something that she posted just yesterday about Coco Gauff, the tennis star, about how Coco is really rewriting history and all of that, and people being amazed because a lot of people there in Great Britain, she lives in Great Britain, didn't see her coming. But she had been inspired by the Williams sisters and all of the things that the Williams sisters had done to blaze the trail for her, how they had understood and taken a lot of the brunt of the racism and the sexism and all of the things that people have put their way, and she's coming up in the aftermath of all of that. And she talks about how when in the midst of all that, how do you apply the metaphysical understanding that when life comes at you that way? What's the metaphysical response or reply to that? And what she basically talks about is that if we are relying on other people to ultimately validate us, we're pursuing a dead end. The validation has to come from within. And even all of the things that I talked about that we might do for one another as a partner in believing, it can only take me so far. That at the end of the day, no matter what my partner believing might say to me and say about me, at the end of the day, I've got to take it one step further and to know who I truly am. And she's just a reminder of that I and you, in your own situation, are ultimately responsible for yourself. And understanding how magnificent that you are. And when you do this, love unconditionally, you see things through the eyes of spirits, and you let yourself be who you truly are, then you stand in love. You don't have to worry about falling and can't get up because you're already standing. And so it is.